Okay, man, this is awesome. We get more of this. I'm excited about this. So it's my honor to introduce up to the podium the chairman of the Tom Clements Award, Rick Ramish. Rick Ramish is an associate from the great states of Wisconsin and the great state of Colorado. Mr. Ramish.
Morning. I, like Jeff, started going through the numerous documents that have been submitted for each person who's being nominated for these awards and started writing notes, and then decided probably the best thing to do is to write down or just read off what has been already said. I think it's important because there's always a lot of new people, whether they be our partners or directors, that understand what this award is and why it is and who it is. This award is the Tom Clements Award. And Tom Clements had a career in corrections, I believe a 30-year career in corrections in Missouri, and then did something that a few of us have done, but not very many, and very difficult. He packed up his family and he moved to Colorado. And he moved to Colorado because Governor Hickenlooper wanted the Colorado Department of Corrections to be more progressive, particularly in the area of stopping the overuse of solitary confinement. And he did that. And he started to dramatically decrease the numbers. And in horrific irony, an individual who had spent 7 years in solitary confinement, white supremacist, mental health issues, released directly from solitary into the community, which every state in the nation was doing at the time. Some states, like Colorado, several hundred. Some states that I won't mention, several thousand. And it took away from the corrections mission of public safety. This individual behaved himself for a short period of time when he was released, cut his monitor off, got a handgun, ordered a pizza, and the media called the person, and legitimately so, a pizza deliverer. I believe he actually worked full-time for IBM, was a father of 3, and had the second job to bring in a little more income to continue his education. This offender made him tape a rambling statement about the evils of solitary confinement, murdered him, threw him in the trunk of his car. We presume took the pizza shirt, the pizza box, went to the Clements' residence, rang the doorbell, murdered him, and Mr. Clements died in his wife's arms. So this award is really about innovation, being progressive. And the Frankie Award tends to recognize incredible individual accomplishments. The Clements Award does that too, but also recognizes the department. And so it's a dual award, frankly. And we all know that you can have the best vision in the world. If you don't have the people that'll take it through, it means nothing. And so that's what this award represents. The leader who has the vision and the department that has the desire to carry that vision through. Before I announce this year's receiver of the Clements Award, it is a great, great honor to have Dr. Clements here, who in her own right in her own field is very, very well known. Her daughter, Rachel. And we would be honored, Lisa, if you would come up and say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. I am so grateful to represent my family in receipt of this opportunity, and really to thank all of you for your participation in remembering Tom. It's always a breathtaking moment when we recount Tom's death, and I'd like for our lives to be about Tom's life. And, you know, as I see you, and I've been talking with a number of you, I hear the stress and the strain of men and women who lead every day, and the impact of a pandemic to just make it a little bit harder. And I want to just bring a note of hope and encouragement. Tom strongly felt that his team was far more important than he in the work that he did, and that if he could just get out of their way and let them do what they do best, that they could do great things. And in Missouri, after 35 years and then moving to Colorado, I think he saw a new opportunity in Colorado to dramatically impact the lives of individuals, particularly those who were in administrative segregation. And I just wanted to leave you with these congratulations and with a comment, as so you know that we're from Missouri, and Mark Twain, the grantor of all wisdom, has a comment that particularly captures Tom, I think. It is curious that physical courage should be so common in the world and moral courage so rare. And I urge you to just keep on moving forward and leading your staff so very well, and encourage you in your work. Thank you.
First, I would like to thank those that were nominated for this award. You know, all departments are doing great things. And this committee would appreciate it if your names would be submitted to us for the great things that you do, because you need to be recognized. It's hard to pick a winner. Don't always get it the first time, don't always get it the second time. But as you continue to do great things, you'll get where you want to go. So I'd like to thank the committee members, Heidi Washington, co-chair Bernie Warner, Leanne Birch, Jimmy LeBlanc, Gary Moore, and Harold Clark, for the tough work that we do, because they really go over these submission papers trying to get the best of the best. So this year, the person who received the award, and I'll read some of the things that has been done with this department: worked with the General Assembly to secure $93 million for capital improvements for aging prisons, increased correctional officer starting salaries, $10,000 over 8 years. And there isn't a person sitting at this table that doesn't have staffing problems. And a big piece of that is money, and understanding how hard it is to get raises for your correctional officers. And I at one time told my governor the reason it was so difficult is because you all have the largest agencies in your state. And so it's a really big hit to give your officers raises. And that's one of the main reasons they never pay your officers what they're worth. So just getting that amount of money takes a tremendous amount of effort. But not only for correctional officers, just as important are clinicians. And this individual was able to secure wages that were comparable to what was going on in the private sector to boost the staff for clinicians that are so important to what you do. Now that's just money. This individual started extensive re-entry programs, which had his state become one of the leaders in the reduction of recidivism in the nation. As a result of that, they were able to close 6 institutions. Now, closing 6 institutions in its own right is a pretty good thing. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? But when you look beyond that, the more important thing is that means that's 6 institutions where people aren't coming back to fill them. And that's a direct result of the programming that has been done by this department. Individual has created partnerships with universities to develop degree programs for offenders, has developed additional re-entry programs. And one of the most important things that has been done is they initiated a violence reduction program that was not only programming to reduce violence within the facilities, but a classification program to be able to identify those that had a history of violence within those facilities, and then to work with those individual offenders to reduce violence. So it was with great honor that this year's awardee is Director Bryan Stirling from the South Carolina Department of Corrections.
I'm going to get through this with humor. I'm very honored to receive the Director Tom Clements Award. To Tony, congratulations. No one's surprised you're from Brooklyn. I think that's where you said you're from, right? Yep. So to Rick, thank you very much. You've been very helpful to me. Dr. Clements, Rachel, I'm very sorry for your loss. Nothing will bring your dad back, but hopefully this honors his memory. To my mom, my wife, my kids, Jenny's mom, my cousin who's on the call. Sorry, my dad's sister. My dad died 1.5 years ago, and I know he'd be proud of me. My uncle, I think, is on the call. My priest, Father West, is up there somewhere. He's the one with a collar. So I know Director Clements really cared about the offenders. He cared about his staff. He cared about programming. He cared about community partners, and that's what we're doing at the Department of Corrections. To the former recipients, Gary, Leanne, Rick, Heidi, Harold, Jimmy, Steve, Bernie, thank you very much for the honor. Leanne told me last night to speak from my heart, and that's generally what I do. This is tough without my dad. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm a crier, sorry. One of the things that's very difficult to do is to explain to people why prisons matter. My mother's family was in law enforcement for over 100 years. My great-grandfather was a Boston policeman. My grandfather was a Boston policeman, rose up to be chief detective of homicide in the Suffolk District Attorney's Office. I had great uncles. I've been an uncle that's in law enforcement. So why do prisons matter? They matter because 85% of the folks that come get out within 5 years. And my staff hears me say that all the time. These are going to be our neighbors. They're going to be sometimes our loved ones. And don't we want them better than when they came in? And the way I sell this to the General Assembly and the folks that just say, you know what, forget about them. I tell this story. I ask them to please close their eyes, think around the last time that they were able to be with their family because of COVID, and take that one person and put them out in the community. You can either put them at a bus stop, you can put them at a restaurant, you can put them at the library. And I want you to have a choice of who's going to be sitting next to that person. You can have a person that's been in a cell 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, had no programming, no future, no connection with their family, doesn't know where their next meal is coming from, doesn't know where they're going to lay their head. Or you can have someone that has a job, has an education. More likely than not, about 40% of the folks that we have to supervise have mental health issues. We can get them stabilized, get them back out in society. We can find a place for them to live. We can find clothing for them. We can find hope. We can find a future. We can connect them with their family. Now, who do you want to sit next to your loved one? And then it's an easy conversation after that. They just open up the checkbooks and they start writing money for programming. They start writing money for mental health. They start writing money in their budget for correctional staff, because you cannot do this without correctional staff. I want to thank Attorney General Wilson, Governor McMaster for his support. I want to thank John Osment, who is, for a Catholic boy, my rabbi. I call him. He's my, and Dr. Clements, you'll understand this, but he's sort of my psychiatrist. Anybody knows John, you got to wrap your mind around that. Senator Martin, Senator Harpootlian, and others that wrote very supportive letters for me. Governor McMaster has been very supportive. We worked together in private practice. It was me and his three brothers, practiced law, tried cases around the state. I worked for him when I was in the Attorney General's office. And now I'm working for him because he's the governor. Governor Haley, when I first took over, I was her chief of staff, and she sat me down and she said, Bryan, these folks get out. We need to make them better. And that's exactly what we're doing in South Carolina. We did just announce the lowest recidivism rate in the country. One of the things that we have is we did actually close 7 prisons, and I wish my staff and I could take credit for that, but John and his cohorts were on a sentencing reform committee. Democracy starts in the states. There are incubators for democracy. In 2010, they did sentencing reform. We were sending far too many people to prison for the wrong reasons. It was not helpful. They came out worse than they came in. So that, combined with what we're doing with reentry services, now everybody goes through a reentry program. Jake Atston's over there somewhere. There he is, Jake. Terry Marshall helps very difficult people get situated, but we make sure that simple things like explaining incarceration, some people are they're just going to lie about it because they don't want to talk about it. It's going to come up. They've got to have an answer. And the answer is, you know what? This is what I did when I was younger, but look what I've done since then. We're working on a program now where people are so desperate to hire people right now. We can get these people jobs. They can get jobs if we just package it right. Say, look at the skills they learned while they were incarcerated. Look what they did. Look at their disciplinary history. Look at the degrees they got. And then we reach out, and every speech I give, I ask the businesses to please hire my folks. Please hire them, because you have 2 choices. You can hire them, or you can pay for them to be incarcerated, because they're going to find a way. So we are also working with our Department of Employment Workforce. We're working with our drug agency, which helps people get off drugs, MAT, and things of that nature. We're working with our health agency. Simple things like birth certificates, simple things that they need to get a driver's license. I'll tell you a quick story, and then I'll move on. We had an individual who got out and he wanted to get his driver's license. Anybody that's been to a DMV anywhere in the country, I would say, it's a frustrating process. It can be very difficult. They can ask for forms that you don't have. You get a number, you got to wait, and you got to go back, and this, that, and the other. So this individual was having great difficulty. So we have someone at the Department of Motor Vehicles that is specially trained to deal with folks that are incarcerated. So he called back to headquarters, and they said, let me get the person at DMV on the phone. The person at DMV on the phone said, tell him to go to window number 6. Went to window number 6. They connected with the person at the DMV headquarters. Now, this is a person who was on parole, and probably if he had an incident, he would have come back to prison because he was going to get angry, and then things can kind of escalate that way. Well, it turns out he had everything he needed. He just didn't know how to communicate that. He was with his sister, and the person that was at that window, the first window he went to, was not trained to properly to ask for the right documents. That's an individual that went, got his driver's license. We'll probably never see that individual again. He'll go on to be a productive member of society. He'll be there for his family. He'll be there for his kids, and we'll never see him again. Isn't that what we all want, sitting around this table and in the back? I want to take a moment. As Rick said, this is an award not just for me, but for my staff. So I want to recognize some that aren't here and some that are here. Joel Anderson is a godsend. He's my deputy over operations. Everybody's seen the whirlwind that we call Dane Hale. She wave, Dave. She's my assistant, but she does a great job. Dexter Lee does legislative affairs. Sally Elliott is our legal counsel. She's in charge of our mental health lawsuit and implementation of that. Dr. Chris Kunkel is doing great work with mental health. Jake Gadsden's over there. Wave your hand, Jake. Jake played football with George Rogers. I said that earlier. Worked in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, as did Terry. Daniel Mullins is over there. Tom Osmer's not here. April Clark. Christy Shane. Sorry, I ripped up your remarks and just wrote my own. But I'd like my staff just to stand up and be recognized. You work so hard and you don't get the recognition you deserve. So sometimes I talk about the 3 U's, which is understaffed, underpaid, and underappreciated. And that is what we all deal with every day. To my fellow directors, I gave a little video actually not a couple of months ago now, when COVID first started. It seems like a couple months ago. And I told my staff, what you're doing is unprecedented. You should be very proud of what you're doing. No one has ever seen what's going on in corrections with COVID. What we have to do every day, the daily phone calls, the temperature checks, taking all the people to the hospital, everything else, just to make sure this population is safe. Not only this population is safe, but our staff is safe. If I told y'all 3 or 4 years ago that you're going to have to wear masks around all the time and take temperature checks, if you're going to have to have, I don't know, 80, 90, 100 officers at the hospital all the time, calling families saying your loved one has passed because of COVID or because of an epidemic, you wouldn't believe me. This is the stuff that movies are made of. And you're doing incredible work. You really are. When I sit around this table at these meetings, I am so proud to hear the conversations and the ideas that you have and what you're doing. I constantly, and Dane and others can shake their head at this, but I am constantly texting my staff when I'm sitting around these tables, listening to what y'all are doing in other states. And the best part of a good idea is when someone steals it, and I'm stealing your ideas left and right. So thank you very much. We did have, when I took over, we had about 24,000 people incarcerated. We have just over 15,000 people incarcerated right now. And that is because every level, we changed it now. It's max, medium, and minimum. We have a reentry program. The max program is a 2-year reentry program. We've had a little bit of difficulty with it because of COVID. But what we're going to do is we're going to reverse it, because we used to have people have jobs and then they'd go to the reentry program. So we're going to do the reentry program first, and then they're going to go to their job. So hopefully the only thing that will change at the end of their sentence is where they put their head at night. They'll have money for that first month's rent. They'll have money for that car payment. That first month's rent might as well be $1 million if you don't have a dollar in your pocket. One of the things I always ask my staff, because I did not come from corrections, as I said a little while ago, is why do we do this? Does this make sense? And sometimes I'll get feet shuffling and looking at the floor. No, we've just always done it this way. And that is probably one of the worst answers I can get, because it's just not, if it's a reasonable thing. I want to take a moment to recognize some of the advocates I work with, Tracy Fant, Michelle Hunter, and others. I appreciate them trusting me. That's a difficult thing with the director sometimes, is the trust from advocate groups. And I appreciate them knowing that if they call me and there's a problem, I'm going to personally call and fix it, or I'm going to make sure it's fixed. And I appreciate them taking my word that that's going to happen, because corrections, we make mistakes. We manage a lot of human beings. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, the best thing we can do is own up to it and fix it. And that's what I see everybody around this table doing, is fixing it. Because a lot of folks that came to prison, they made mistakes. They made bad choices. They were with the wrong person, or they had a drug addiction, or they had mental health issues or something like that, and they came to prison. And Dr. Clements and Rachel, one of the things that we've done, we've dropped our solitary confinement population. I think when I took over, it was about 18,000. Now we're just around 600, and we're going to be going down even more. And one of the innovative things, I have a buddy of mine who used to work for the in the Attorney General's Association. And he said, hey, he left. He said, I've got a client that's doing metaverse. I don't know if a lot of y'all know what metaverse is. It's a virtual reality thing. But I had a conversation with a guy who was a former representative or senator, I think it was Iowa, and he's got a metaverse company. And I said, well, I think we can use that corrections to step people down. I think we can use that for job training. I think we can use that for explaining incarceration. We've got tablets for folks. We're letting them get an education. We're encouraging them to behave, do the right thing, and get those degrees and really work hard. So thank you very much to the Clements family. I'm very sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for crying. But I really just want to thank my staff. I mean, I just love y'all to death. I just couldn't do it without y'all. Thank my wife and my children, our wives, our husbands, put up with a lot these jobs. The late night phone calls, the leaving the driveway in the middle of the night with the blue lights going, not knowing when we're going to come back or what's on the other end of that drive. They just don't know. And our parents and loved ones also watch us stress. So thank you all very much. Thank you for listening to me when I called. Thank you.
Bryan had mentioned that mistakes occur, and he received a compliment from one of his state senators, and it's hard to get, as we know, compliments from legislators. The compliment was, when a mistake is made, Bryan fixes it. But when you heard Bryan speak, and when I read the submission papers, it was more obvious to me that he had developed programs that stop mistakes from occurring. And that's a hell of a lot better than fixing them once they happen. So thank you, Bryan, for all that you do. And I hope that there's some Frankie winners here, and there are some Clements winners here. And I'm hoping that Kevin can arrange with Madam President to have some photos taken of those in attendance. So thanks again. It's a great honor.
Yes, just as Rick mentioned, so at the break, we're going to break in about 15 minutes. We'd ask all the Clements Award recipients and Michael Frankie Award recipients to come on up here so we can do a proper photo shoot. So thank you again. Bryan, great job, man. Rick, I thought it was just very, very respectful of you to leave out the first paragraph in the submission from the governor. I'll just pull it up. It reads like this. It says, one of the main reasons why Bryan deserves this award is all the crap that he had to clean up after John Osmond's term as director. So I just thought that was respectful of you. Just leave that out. Very nice of you. Very nice of you. No, I'm just kidding, of course. So what Dan is to Tony, John is to Bryan. John really is should be recognized and commended, not only for the big brother role that you play, I think, for Bryan, but truly a mentor to Bryan. You know, John sat in that seat. He understands the struggles and challenges, and just, you know, really is there for Bryan on a, you know, probably almost daily basis of getting feedback, receiving feedback, mulling through decisions and those types of things. So it's a really, really interesting relationship there. And Bryan, again, just like Tony, congratulations. You know, there are some major submissions this year on both accounts. I mean, the packets that were submitted this year for the Frankie and Clements Award were amazing and very, very challenging for both committees to choose one person. And congratulations to your committees because you chose really, really great recipients. So again, awesome job.